Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, adventurers of Earth and beyond, welcome to Point Noir, home of the Point Noir podcast. My name is Jerry the Third, aka Kimono Jack, and I'm so glad you're here with us for our 24th session of the Point Noir podcast, where we use adventure and travel stories from the perspectives of men of color to inspire other men of color to experience change through travel. That's what we're about. So, staying on that topic, I was thinking it might be really interesting to learn what some of you guys' travel goals are as you make your holiday wish list and New Year's resolutions going into the next year. I'd really be interested to know what you guys are looking forward to do or looking to accomplish, and seeing if we have some resources or information already on the show that can help you guys out. Maybe a short list of, travel hacking sites for flight deals, or maybe there's a specific region of the world you want to travel to and experience and you didn't know we already had a guest who spoke on it. So hit us up on IG at Point Noir Show and we'll get right to you. I promise. So without further delay, let's introduce today's special guest. Stay tuned. Joining us today as our special guest at The Point is Mr. Kofi Mensah. You can learn more about Kofi by checking him out on Instagram at Noir Wayfarer, or by checking out his personal website, whilstaway.com, where you can learn more about his perspectives and see a bunch of awesome visuals from his travels all throughout the world. We had a great time chatting about literally everything under the sun, from books that inspired us as kids, maybe to become more adventurous than others, to how he uses self-esteem and confidence to push himself and continue to have drive to pursue a modeling career in South Africa while living in New York half the time of the year. He's got a very dynamic and diverse story, and I think you guys are going to enjoy all the different topics and tidbits that we shared. It definitely has a lot of value to add to a traveler or adventurer of any level experience. So I encourage you guys, as always, to find a very, very comfortable place to sit back and relax, get a refreshing beverage of choice, and you guys should also know that we recorded this while he was driving in his car because time schedules were just tight. So please forgive the audio for this one, but it will continue to improve. I know you guys are going to get a lot of value out of the show anyway. So without further delay, let's get into today's session. Hey, what's going on, Kofi? Thanks for joining us today at Point Noir. How are you feeling today, bro?
Pretty good, Jerry. Pretty good. Thanks for having me on the call today.
100%. I've been following your account on IG for a while, man. You have so much variety on there. Amazing photography, fashion, some cool ideas in the captions, man. It's inspiring.
Thank you. That's what that's what I aim to do. So that's actually really good and affirming to hear that somebody's finding some sort of inspiration from my page, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, man, it's always vibrant, it's always positive. And one of the cool things, this is going to be like a nerd aside, is that because of the way you're photographed, man, like you're really, I like how positively you put darker skin in the focus, man. Like I think it's super intense the way your photos come across. It's super dope, and I know it's a little bit of extra effort because of the technology. You know that, right? With the way all the stuff are processed, dude. Whoever's shooting you, if it's you or somebody else, you guys are crushing it.
Thank you. I mean, I work with a lot of different photographers, so I guess you'll see, as you mentioned, that there's a wide variety of images, and there's a lot of travel images, but then you also have some more modeling photos as well. And I am a model. So I just use my platform as an all-in-one. I see my page as a community page of somebody that's a traveler, that's a storyteller. It's also a model, an entrepreneur. And I use my page to display all the types of work that I do. So when it comes to actually showcasing my dark skin, I do think that it's important. Growing up, when I moved back to the States from Ghana, it was just being dark skinned and being proud of your African heritage was not as an in thing then as it is now. It wasn't really okay to just be yourself. Everybody wanted you to fit in, and it's like, I'm sure you grew up in the States, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you in high school or in middle school, you probably heard of, African booty scratcher, and like your skin's too dark, and there wasn't just an appreciation of being who you are. So now I hope that in my travels and on my page, people can just see that, just come and be as you are.
Yeah, man, it's super dope. So let's jump into it, man. Why don't you tell the people a little bit about who you are? You mentioned you're an entrepreneur, a model. You are, I think, a bit of an influencer in the IG space. Tell us a bit about yourself and how you got into adventuring and travel, maybe even including moving from Ghana.
Yeah. So, well, I was born in New York, and I moved to Ghana when I was very young, probably just like a year old, and I spent almost a decade there before moving back to New York. And
So was it
after,
because of your parents? Your
oh
parents had
yeah,
roots over there.
it was definitely yeah. So my parents are Ghanaian. My parents were born in Ghana, and
Okay.
they've lived all over as well, mostly within Africa and Europe, and then they just came to then they moved to the States like in the 70s or 80s, and
Okay.
that's where my roots come from them, and they're Ghanaian obviously by ethnicity. Um, they're from Kumasi. That's the second largest city in Ghana. So you might know of Accra, which is the capital, and then you have Kumasi.
Hmm.
And I really wanted to just push forward into traveling. I've always had a, a wandering spirit about me. I just wanted to do something that was completely different. And growing up largely in metropolitan areas, especially as in New York, you everything around you is constantly concrete, and it can, even though New York State is beautiful, living in New York City can just sometimes just really you just I didn't feel as inspired, really. Just buildings and buildings everywhere. It's still a beautiful place to live, don't get me wrong. So after I finished school, I really just I was able to just push more into what it is that I wanted to do in terms of seeing the world, right? Because you're done with school, you don't have that schedule to fit into anymore. Part of who I am is somebody that just loves adventure, somebody that knows that there's always more to see, more to seek, and be inspired by. So, about 4 years ago, I actually moved to Brazil. This was after about a year after I graduated college. I worked for Senator Leahy in DC. Um, in the and Senator Leahy is the senator of Vermont, and my connection to
Okay.
Vermont is that's where I went to university. So I went to the University of Vermont, and after that, I came back to New York, and that summer just did a few different temp jobs that would still give me the flexibility of my schedule, more control over my own schedule. So just work a few jobs, and mostly in finance and the legal world, in for a few months, and then I would be able to leave, right? Take
Right.
go on a trip for about 2.5, 3 weeks. Just really get out there and just travel deeper, which is what I'm about as well. It's more than just traveling and just spending a few days here and there, but it's about how do you connect to people when you are abroad, especially when language is limited and you obviously don't really know where you're going, but you want to engage with the locals. You want to be here and say, okay, this is what's actually happening. This is how people feel about politics, the economy, also how they view Western countries. Those are the types of conversations and the people to people interactions that really get me motivated about traveling. So I moved to Brazil, worked there as a English teacher, as well as worked for a NGO in one of the favelas in Vidigal. And I also taught English at a multinational company. So it was a
Okay.
great, yeah, so it was a great time living in Brazil. This was before the World Cup in Brazil. And I remember my students that I had at the favela, the kids that I volunteered with, um, they didn't really speak any English. English was zero to like minimal to zero. And
Right.
part of what I would try to instill in them is the importance of learning a second language, such as English, and as well as making themselves more marketable to get a job for the coming World Cup and Olympics, because it was going to be so the world was going to have its eyes on Brazil for two important global sports. So I really learned a lot from those kids, maybe more than I was able to teach them, honestly. Just the resilience that they had growing up in, I'm sure you've heard of shanty towns in like South Africa, and a favela is essentially the
Yeah.
version of that. There's poor education, poor to
Hmm.
little to no education, just not enough resources. But those kids got up every day in the afternoons. They would meet me at the NGO, and we would go through different classes, as well as I would also coach football for them. So it was a great time.
Okay.
And
And
what
football, as in the
is
international
no,
soccer.
yeah, football as in soccer.
Well, for us, just for us, the small minority of the world who live in the United States, who call it, we're the only ones.
Yeah, yeah, but I'm glad you know what I meant.
Oh yeah, bro. A year and a half in France, I had no choice.
Oh, brilliant! What were you doing out in France?
Oh man, that was the start of my whole adventure thing, man. I quit my corporate job, went out there on a one-way ticket. I was a
Okay,
Black History tour guide for a year. I was an au
wow.
pair. I was a professional musician. That's where I got my experiences to Africa. But we're here to talk about your experiences, bro. That Brazil trip, how long did it last?
I'm sorry.
When you moved to Brazil, how long were you there for?
I was there for 3 months.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow,
so
so that's a hefty amount of time.
yeah, so I was able to. I got there at the start, at just the ending of Christmas. So I was really able to experience an exciting and jovial time in the country, because I'm telling you, New Year's is just magical in Brazil, specifically Rio de Janeiro, where just everybody on New Year's Eve is just dressed in white, and you're dressed in white obviously because white represents cleanliness, freshness, and new, and you want to start the new year off, feeling refreshed and new. And people are out
Right.
on the beaches. It's just a general good spirit. There's fireworks. It was when it comes to a New Year's experience, that is one of those that I will never forget. And I don't think I'm ever going to have stateside or in Europe anytime soon.
Wow. And I
Yeah.
can, I'm with you on that one, bro, because, we sometimes, especially when you think about the weather, like the weather was still warm down there, wasn't it? You could be
Yes.
on a beach and
Yes,
comfortable.
exactly. So this is so your love of winter. No, no. Like I'm figuring out how to get back down to the southern hemisphere for the winter months. I'm not trying to be here for winter. So and as it's in South America, they're on the opposite end of our, season. So yeah, around December, as it's getting cold over here, it's still summer there.
Yeah, those are classic snowboard tactics, and we've been going back and forth on Instagram a little bit about the better season. I appreciate them all. I think it's always interesting because summer always gets a lot of shine. You know what I'm saying? It's obvious why people like the sunshine.
Yes.
It feels good, it's nice, but I think there's some beautiful qualities in the winter. But I think it's even more powerful to have choice, the way that you're talking about, to say, you know what, I've tried a little bit of this, I've tried a little bit of that. And you know what? I'm going to be in Rio every time I can be for,
Yes.
New Year's and the holiday season.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that with the choice, because I think that that's what traveling does. It opens your mind, and it opens not just your mind and just your heart, but all the experiences just opens you up, your whole being, to realize that there is more out there, and there's more that you can. There's a different type of lifestyle that you can live that is just different from what you're used to. Maybe it means, in terms of actually living your best life, spending half of the year in one end of the world and the other half of the year in another end of the world, whatever brings you the most optimal happiness. And for me, it would be spending, the being in summer all year round. And that would mean
Right.
living on on two different hemispheres, or I guess moving to California, So
Yes, but the way the taxes are set up, I think you might be making a good move in Rio. I'm not mad at you for that.
yeah.
That's funny. So I'm really curious. In growing up, you mentioned, kind of moving back to Ghana when you were young. What inspired you to kind of seek more in life? Because as much as you've experienced, and when I look at your IG stories, it looks like you have such a strong sense of community and bonding with the people that you do share on your page. So I think you're making great deep connections, like you mentioned. But who inspired you to kind of be that person when you were growing up? Was it your parents? Were there others? Did you have maybe a literary character that was a role model?
um It's very interesting that you mention a literary character because one of my favorite pastimes is reading. Even
Hmm.
as a kid, I found books to be my best friends. They were the gateways to like limitless imagination. And I can't really source one um, book or one protagonist or antagonist, right? That made
Right?
me that inspired me to travel. I would say that definitely reading certain books, like for example, the C.S. Lewis series, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, that was amazing.
Yeah.
For a while, I would just say that my location was Narnia, right? Because Narnia just represented to me the 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 opposite of mundane, the opposite of routine. It was just spontaneous. It's a spontaneous place where any and everything can happen. And that's
Yeah.
how I view life and traveling. And I think I just was inspired by what inspired authors, what inspired people. And I think it's out there in the world. And once you're there, it's a feeling that okay, maybe you're doing something right. It might have been a connection that you had with somebody. So I can't really pinpoint one person or thing that inspired me. It was just knowing that, listen, there's 196 countries out there. There's no way that you're just going to see a few. And I had the opportunity to grow up on two different continents. And so far, I've
Right.
lived in three different continents, but um, four actually. I used to live in Thailand.
Okay. Yeah,
And
man. Check them off.
yeah, so it's it's growth, and I think it's just
Yeah.
finding growth through travel. That's what inspired me, and that's what continues to inspire me. Um, and honestly, my junior year in college, I was able to do a study abroad trip, and I we started off in Switzerland. We went to Strasbourg. We went to Geneva. I mean, obviously, Geneva's in Switzerland, but we went to Luxembourg, Spain, just so
Mm.
many of these other European countries. And I think that, whilst I was still in undergrad, sparked even just lit the spark even brighter. It was a reaffirmation that okay, you are back out here traveling, and it's more than just going to Cancun for spring break the year before. It's more than just the knowledge of having lived abroad, but I was back in it on like a 3 week
Right.
road trip essentially. We drove all throughout Europe. It was just we flew into Switzerland and flew out of Spain, but everywhere else we just drove around the continent, and it was amazing. So I guess
Wow. And
yeah.
what an opportunity and time to soak things in. I mean, still being an undergrad, still being, curious about the world, figuring out your own path.
Hmm.
Um, Study abroad. I wish I had the opportunity or taken the opportunity when I was in school, but I think it's a great resource.
Yeah.
But I love that you talked about the books, man, because you might not get that chance. It might not be cost prohibitive, but I read the same books you did, man. The whole Narnia series, Chronicles of Narnia, I think it's called
Yes.
in full. The Rats of Nim. I don't know if you heard about that.
Yes.
Is about a bunch of woodland creatures. Yeah, see, they had like badgers that had broadswords and shit. It was
Yeah.
lit.
No, there's also books like The Catcher in the Rye. Um, J.D. Salinger, he was a great author. He
Hmm.
wrote The Catcher in the Rye, and with the protagonist character Holden Caulfield, he was traveling. I think there was a one point in the story, if I'm correct, he had run away, but he just didn't know what he wanted to do, or what he wanted to be. But he knew that in sort of just going somewhere new, he could hopefully figure that out. Um, and then there's also the Lord of the Flies, which to me was
Yeah.
is a great book because
Sad.
imagine, I mean, it's sad, it's a bit tragic, but getting stranded on an island, but it also goes to show you your a test of character, and they wouldn't have been placed in this situation if they hadn't taken a trip. But knowing that, listen, anything can happen, whether you're sticking to a routine or not. But books like those, they just they struck something in me that it was like, okay, there is so much more out there. The ideas for these stories had to have come from somewhere, right? So we all draw
Right.
inspiration from somewhere. So it's where did these authors draw their inspiration from? And I believe that it was being able to travel and see new things.
100%, man. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for mentioning that because I had damn near forgotten I read the same books. I was like, oh yeah, that was
Right.
pretty lit. That kind of
Yeah.
gets you, it kind of hones your spirit to seek those experiences. And I think other listeners would be like, oh yeah, maybe that's why I am the way I am today.
Hmm.
Um, that's really dope. So, I mean, throughout your experiences, and I'm guessing you studied law or something in legal when you were an undergrad.
Yes, so I was a political science major,
Okay.
political science and history double major, minored in philosophy, and I've always had in high school, I had in my head that I was going to be a lawyer. So I was taking legal classes. Most of my senior year political science courses were law related in some aspect. So yeah,
Okay. Yeah, because you mentioned the internship working for the senator or governor
yes.
in Vermont, and that requires some background. So one of the things that strikes me about what I've been able to see about you online and even you talking is you do so many things. You're an entrepreneur. You are a traveler, an adventurer, but you've also been a teacher. You're also a professional model. You're a curator of content. You write. You create. How have you been able to carve all these paths for yourself to make a living and to also be regarded as a professional?
It hasn't been easy, you know, but I
Yeah.
think it's just my spirit. I've always been involved in multiple things, in from high school to college. I was student body president at my university. I was a tour guide. I was a resident advisor. So that sort of overactive involvement, spirit just translated into postgraduate work life. I didn't want to do just one thing.
Right.
So it was, I knew that going to new places and seeing new places is at the core of my being. So how do I create a lifestyle that will give me the opportunity to do that. And I'm still very much figuring it out. So, to anybody listening to this, I hope you're not thinking that I'm perfect or that I have it all together, because I don't.
Right.
I think that we all just continuously, every day, try to find what we can do in our lives that will allow us to continue doing what we love, right? And for
Right.
me, it was having, I think the most important thing is to have multiple sources of income. Like, you have to figure out, okay, what do you need to do to ensure that you have the time in your schedule and the resources in your schedule, in your life, to be able to just get out there and sort of just book a ticket and go. Obviously, easier said than done. So for me, it was honing in on my money saving skills. Right. I think
Hmm.
it's lost a lot on millennials how important it is to actually save money, for a rainy day. Um, but not just a rainy day, but just to incorporate saving into your life. So that's one thing. Ever since high school, really any job that I've ever held, I always just saved a little bit of money for that. But then it's also trying different jobs. If you're a recent college graduate and you really want to travel, I would say sign up with a temp agency so they can get you out on a few jobs where you're working anywhere between an assignment that's for a few days to a few months, and then you save up money that way. And when your assignment is done, you just maybe book a ticket to a new place that you wanted to go to. I would also piggyback on what you said. And I mean, in terms of what you did, moving to Paris, being an au pair, a tour guide, research where it is that you want to go and see how you can work there
Right.
to support yourself. Case in point, moving to Brazil for those 3 months, I was able to support myself by finding a job as an English teacher predominantly with this multinational organization, but then also working for a nonprofit as well, which was the volunteer work. So it's just focusing on what you love and finding out how to support yourself with with that, and then also just not giving up. Part of what I do is modeling, and my agency is based in Cape Town. So currently, I split half of my time between New York City and Cape Town, and I guess the rest of the world when I can. But
Right.
being signed to an agency did not come easy. I've always been told, "Oh, you have a model look, and you should look, go to different agencies." And over the years, I've done numerous personal modeling work on myself just to build portfolios, to build my modeling
Hmm.
portfolio. But then I would go to agencies, and the answer would always be pretty much the same. "Oh, thank you, but we have somebody that has your look right now," or "Your look is just not what we're looking for." Or it's always, "Oh, you have an amazing look, but you just don't fit what our clients are looking for now." So for me, I just look at their boards and I'm like, "You're really telling me that you have enough of my look, or my look's not what you're looking for right now, but there are like 90 white guys and white girls that not all look the same, but like they fit a certain mold." So there is a lot. So when it comes into the modeling industry, being a person of color, it's just twice as hard to break into it, just as it is twice as hard for people of color to break into so many other things in the States. So keep that in mind too, that modeling is not easy by any means. So it's in terms of actually becoming a signed model with an agency and then actually getting work as well. So it's about having a few different things going, right? Especially as an entrepreneur where you are your main source of income. You're not working for anybody else but yourself. I also worked in real estate. I have my real estate license in New York City. I'm
Oh
licensed.
wow.
Yeah. So for the past few years, I used to work with a boutique law firm, and they were one of the consistently ranked one of the top real estate firms in New York City. And I started working with them from the ground up as an office manager. And then within a year, I moved to corporate, and I was actually the only black boy in their corporate office. And I worked up with them up until last year when I just decided, listen, almost like I'm just done with the corporate world for now, anyway.
Right.
I'm somebody that can
Right.
definitely engage in both worlds, and a lot of people dislike the corporate world just for the sake of disliking it. And I'm like, everybody's different. Some people like putting on a suit every single day. Some people like being in the office. It's that structure. And if that's what makes you happy, if that's what gets you going, then I'd say pursue that as well. Don't necessarily think of the corporate world as the death of dreams. It's okay. Think of the corporate world as a stable source of income that is going to help you reach your dreams. Just make sure that you don't get stuck in the very toxic machine that the corporate world can be, right? So
Right.
use it to your benefit. I think that's what is most important, and I think that's what a lot of people forget, that it's you have to use your job, whether it's a 9 to 5 or you're working a few times a week. Use it to achieve what is going to make you the most happy and most like just satisfied in life. It's
Yeah,
yeah,
100%, man. And not everybody ain't able. I think that's really true. And the corporate skill sets you have, even just showing up on time. I mean, I'm also a professional musician, so I'm
yeah.
very much in a world where there's no structure, there's no standard. So, uh, being able to hold yourself accountable so that you can pursue all these different areas of interest and your schedule, it all comes into play, man. It all really works to make your life satisfying, just the way you said.
Yeah.
I didn't quite realize how international your upbringing had been, and I think it's really awesome not only to talk to men of color on the show about their perspective in travel, but as a Pan African, which we both are, I love the international um, travel man's experience, and I wanted to know how travel has kind of changed your perception of yourself, knowing that you have Ghanaian lineage, but being raised and living in the States and in between these continents. How has your perspective of yourself evolved?
Uh,
It's a big question. I
it
definitely
is.
just
It
realized that was a big
is.
question.
No, but it's a big but good one. I think it's just made me realize even further that I do like connecting with people and hearing people's stories. You are right. It is a big question.
It is a big question. Maybe we'll come back to
But
it. Maybe we'll break it
no,
down a little
it's
bit.
I'm just trying to I see the answer, but I'm trying to get it to you
Right?
as succinct as possible. I think it's just made me realize how I want to positively impact the world, right? And I thought for a long
Yeah.
time that that would have been through law or that would have been through maybe being a diplomat, but realizing that the world is continuously changing, and as you travel, you see those. And I've evolved more in terms of my views, in terms of respecting other people's cultures. I mean, by no means was I ever disrespectful of cultures, but I'm sure everybody has got some cultural ignorance, right? By not
Yeah.
experiencing other cultures and other people. And now that I've had the opportunity to visit six continents and just meet people from all different walks of life, beliefs, um, it allows me to focus more on our humanness that connects us. And I think that that's an evolution of Kofi that over the years I've come to appreciate more. It's less about having been to all of these countries, but more so about these countries now, in some essence, living through me. I get to tell their stories. Case in point, Jerry. So part of the reason why
Yeah.
this call, for anybody that's listening, if it sounds choppy, take full responsibility of that. Part of the reason is that my adventurous spirit this morning I woke up and my friend said, "Hey, do you want to go hiking?" We already had an idea to go hiking this weekend, but we weren't sure how it's going to play out because it's the holiday weekend. But we got up early enough. I usually like to be up by 5:30, 6 a.m. every day. So we decided to go hiking to Hawk Mountain Sanctuary. I happen to be spending the weekend in Philadelphia, and it's about an hour and a half outside of central Philly. It's a beautiful, beautiful um, hike. The vista views, north and south, sublime, especially with all this beautiful fall foliage happening. But I happened to ask one of the guides there for a bandage, and where is she from? Portugal. And thankfully, I speak some Portuguese because I lived in Brazil. So we had this interaction. Here I am just asking you for a bandage, but then that leads into talking about Portugal, talking about Brazil, and just talking about what she's doing here, what I'm doing here, just that connectivity, right? That
Right.
you have this experience and now you're bonded with this person in a place where both of you may not be from, but you have the experience. It's that okay, I have this knowledge of Portuguese because I used to live in Brazil, and and now you get to ask me about Brazil and you've never been. So it's just sharing these stories, and I think that I've changed and become much more of a global minded person, even more than I had hoped to be. And that to me is the most important. A global mindset.
Yeah, man. That's incredible. And I think one of the things that's the only way you can really cultivate that authentically is by
Hmm.
being out there, is by seeing it. But then even more so, having the sort of openness to connect with someone in a moment like you did, because it happens often. I come back in the States, someone speaks a little bit of French, someone happens to be visiting in town, like it just works out. But
Yeah.
you also have that willingness to share. It's not just collect, get all the information, but it's no, let me put this on display. Let me see what this is worth. How can I connect and relate to this person in a way that might be uh, even more beneficial than just getting the band-aid?
Yes.
Nice. How deep was that cut, by the way? Like, was it a bad cut?
Oh, not terrible. I mean, if we ever meet, I'll show you my wound, because my skin just loves to
Wound?
just like collect scars. So I feel like I could tell you a scar from multiple countries. Oh yeah, I got this here, I got this here. So, but part
We're
of
gonna do
life.
that then. We're gonna do that. What is the most? I don't want to say most epic. What is the most interesting scar you have? We'll say been gifted.
Oh God. Okay, I will say that it was New Year's 2015. Was in
Okay.
Israel, and I went to the Dead Sea. So I will say I was on the Israeli end of the Dead Sea, not the Jordanian. And I was obviously in the sea and walking, and I cut myself. So on my left ankle, there's a pretty, noticeable scar there, but I cut myself based upon the crystallized salt rocks at the bottom of the sea. But in that
Wow.
moment, yeah, so in that moment, I was like, bugger, okay, you're bleeding, whatever, and you're in salt water, so get out. But the reason why it's such a memorable experience is that when I got out and I walked to my left, I happened to encounter a group of women and one guy, but the other three women and the guy were, a bit further behind. But the woman that walked up to me, she literally walked up to me as if it was a regular day, which it was. The only thing here is that she was naked. She was completely naked.
Nice.
She walked up to me and she must have felt a welcoming spirit from me because she hugged me. She just hugged me
Yeah.
naked. If she was probably a brunette or something, which is funny because it didn't faze me at all. I'm a nudist, so I have no problem with nudity. It's just I don't know how she was able to sense that in me. But then she took me to a
Yeah.
freshwater spring and helped me clean up my wound and sent me on my way. So that's just one of those scars that you can just never forget how you got it and then what happened after you got it because you're being embraced by this white woman that is completely naked and standing in front of you.
Wow, bro. That
Yeah,
that's an adventure story. I'm thinking right now, it's like, yeah, that's not happening if I go downtown in Dallas.
no,
Some of that stuff only happens when you're abroad.
yeah,
Under different contexts and different circumstances. But I did know about the nudist thing because I've been following you on IG for a while. I'll be
yeah,
reading, bro. I'll be
okay,
I'll be checking it out. So one thing that I think travel really does, especially for people of color, for Black millennials and especially Black men, I think it instills self esteem
yes,
because there's a certain context that exists here in the United States, but as soon as you go overseas, you realize you might be perceived completely differently than you were wherever you grew up in. You feel, I've felt at least a little bit more respect, a little bit more appreciation, sometimes a lot more, especially when I'm
hmm,
in African countries. And what's interesting, I think, as a man though, is the fact that you are a nudist. Because I recently had my first experience. It was just like in a sauna or something like that. It was the first time I'd ever been completely naked somewhere, and that shit was empowering, bro. I was like,
right.
yeah, I could rock this like every day on the daily. Can you talk about that experience? And have you always been that way, or was it a growth progress? A
On
growth process.
I think it was a growth process that really hit after I graduated college. By college, I knew that I was a nudist. When it comes to clothes, I'm a minimalist with clothes. I try and maintain a minimalist lifestyle throughout, but when it comes to clothes, they just put me off. I haven't shopped for clothes this whole year. Shopping in general gives me anxiety, so I try and avoid it
Wow.
as much as possible. And when it comes to clothes, I don't like clothes. I just feel like they just limit you and limit and restrict. So as much as I can, I just like to be in my natural state. Now, when that comes to traveling, part of that includes finding either nudist communities or beaches, largely beaches that I can go to and just
Hmm.
be completely free. One of my favorite nude beaches that I've been to is in Australia, in Melbourne. It's called Point Impossible Nude Beach. So the name alone was just a draw for me. It's about maybe an hour and a half drive south from downtown Melbourne, and it was amazing. I didn't see that many nudists there that day. It was the beginning of spring, so the weather wasn't the most optimal, but it was still a decent sunny day. I remember dogs just strolling on the beach. But one of my earlier moments of being completely naked on a beach was in Mykonos. And I think my friend and I, was a good college friend of mine, we went to Super Paradise Beach, and I hadn't really had an opportunity to be naked outside, so I was just kind of nervous. Naked outside, really abroad, aside from like being along the Atlantic coast as a naked boy growing up, but
Yeah.
I I was like, you know what, just do it. And when you finally just let go, you like you mentioned, it is empowering. And but then you realize that it's also not a big deal. It's really Americans that just make a big deal out of being a nudist or nudism and your body. You go to a lot of beaches in France, and there's just tons of just it's more free spirited and more open mind abroad, and that's what being a nudist for me is just embodies the liberation and just being yourself, coming as you are, all body shapes and sizes welcomed, because it's nothing sexual. It's more so an empowerment of the mind and just realizing that you can be who you are in your natural nude state. And I absolutely love it. I hate clothes, so
Got you. Well, that's impressive alone that you haven't shopped at all this year. I consider myself somewhat of a minimalist, but I kind of enjoy shopping and copping new stuff. But I mean, I thank you so much for sharing that perspective because one, that's the first that we've had on the show. But kind of piggybacking on the point about self-esteem and the sexualization of human nudity here in the States. I know we're getting deep, y'all. Like, trust me, we in the States, in the United States, every time you see something naked, it always has a sexual connotation. That's all that means.
yeah,
And globally, that's often not the case, especially in European. I mean, just all over, it's not the case. A naked body is just, the parts that you came with when you were born.
yeah,
So I think it's freeing for me and us as Black people to not only get away from that sexualization, but the fetishism that comes along, oftentimes with our nude bodies. It's
exactly.
kind of you get it,
No,
bro.
I completely get it, especially
That's
the
liberating.
fetishization of the black male body as well. So I think we just need to make it more commonplace, and it will become less fetishized.
Right. And I mean, you're not the only one. There are a few other IG personal pages of Black travelers that are into it. I think, what's his name? Haitian Nomad also does trip like this. So you guys, if you don't know or not, you can actually go on trips with other people in the nudist community to go to these beaches together. You don't have to go solo dolo by yourself. There are opportunities on Instagram, right?
Yeah, like I've heard of nudist retreats in Costa Rica, etc., and I'm very much interested in doing one of them. So I'll have to hit up Haitian Nomad and see what they're about.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is some extra new wave stuff. Some of the people listening to the show haven't traveled at all. Some people have a little bit of experience. We kind of went on the opposite end of the spectrum, but I think when it comes to nudity, it's a fun topic. It's super interesting, and more so, it's humanizing
Yeah,
because once you get rid of the sexual nature of stuff, you're really looking someone in the eyes for real, for real.
yes,
I'm so glad you shared that. I was thinking about mentioning it, but you went there anyway, and I was
yeah,
like, hell yeah, we're gonna double down. We got crazy scars in the Dead Sea. We got nudism. It's all there, baby. Coming together.
loving it.
That's dope. Um, so being the super traveler and entrepreneur that you are involved in all these aspects, what I wanted to know was what sort of additional, we'll say, careers or skill sets did you have to pick up to be successful? Like, did you have to learn Did you decide to learn how to model so that you could travel? Did you decide to?
Yeah, it comes to the modeling. Honestly, modeling is something that, for the most part, you either have or you don't have, right? No, you could go to tons of modeling schools and learn how to walk, etc. To me, that's just a waste of money, right? You have to have a look about you. You have to have a character, charisma about you. That's just going to want to get an agency to work with you and clients to work with you. So for me, in the past year, what in terms of looking at modeling as another source of income is, or rather, another main source of income was, listen, Kofi, you've already got the look, you've worked with other brands before in the past, just really double down and get signed. And so I've gone to, and this again about not giving up, which ties into traveling, is just constantly seeking new opportunities and new experiences. If I had just listened to the first agency that turned me down, I wouldn't be where I am today in terms of modeling with a top agency in South Africa. And when it comes to
Right.
flights, right? If you're looking to go somewhere, but but you've read nothing but horrible reviews, or the flight prices seem too much out of the way, you're just going to give up, right? But who knows? Maybe that
Right.
review that you heard was just for a period of time, or it was somebody that traveled and really wasn't traveling for a deeper travel experience, just a superficial travel experience. But it's 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 just about persistence. Now, and that's another thing that came with modeling too. You have to be persistent. Nothing is guaranteed, even if you are signed with an agency. That means going to all the open calls that they send you on, castings, opening yourself up to runways, and just also pushing yourself out there to work with brands, right? Say you type it in an email, let them know that you're represented by this agency, here's your online portfolio, and that how that translates into travel and trying to support myself more from traveling is, um, you know you have to promote yourself. So when you're reaching out to
Right.
these other brands to work with them on your on a travel aspect, you have to come with that experience. Say, hey, these are the amount of countries that I've gone to. These are the connections that I've built. This is why I travel, and this is what I hope to do from my travels. I would love it if I could partner with your brand to help tell my story, as well as not, but it's more than just my story. It's a story that I know others will find interesting, captivating, and will draw more attention, hopefully, to your brand. So it's
Yeah.
just about marketing yourself. And one of the important things about at traits rather of being a model is confidence. You need that self confidence, especially when you're walking in a bloody runway and there's nothing but harsh fluorescent lights staring at you. You have to just be in your zone and be confident. And that's what being a traveler today, like in terms of a full-time traveler, and you're trying to support yourself from your passion of traveling, you have to be confident. You have to seek any and every opportunity, right? Don't think that anything's
Yeah.
really beneath you. Like, for example, this podcast, right? Who knows who might be listening to the podcast, and it's like, okay, I want to take Kofi and Jerry on a show. They'll do a podcast in a new country, in a new city every week, right? You just never know what's going to come out from something.
Dude, that's super rich with gems, because I think overall the theme of this discussion has been a lot about self-esteem, which I think it kind of underpins everybody in the direction they take in life. But self-esteem is necessary to even ask the questions and think it's and dare to think that something's possible. And if there's one thing that for other men of color or travelers in general is that if you get one benefit out of traveling, it's self-esteem, is being able to rely on yourself,
On
being
yourself.
able to say, I can develop the skills, you know, or I can find the resources. I can plug into a podcast. I'll hit up Kofi on Instagram and maybe he replies, maybe he doesn't, but I'm not going to lose if I try.
Precisely. You're only gonna lose if you don't try.
1,000%, man. That's super dope. Wow, that's super dope. Do you have any travel hacks? Anything that you still use to make sure that you're being as economic as possible with your savings, since you are a saver. Anything that a first time traveler or newbie traveler would be able to latch into right away.
Listen, if you're a first time traveler under 25, or hell, bloody under 30, I'd say, look into hostels, right? In a lot of my earlier travels, hostels were my best friends.
Right.
I met so many genuine good people that only magnified my trips by staying at a hostel. So don't and this is what I say that a lot of people will look at the gram and just think that, oh, they're staying at this fancy hotel or they're just completely living the good life. And it's like, no, part of traveling and traveling to multiple countries on a budget is being a savvy traveler in terms of what you're spending your money on. And a lot of that is after your flight is accommodation. So I would say look into hostels and then also look to sites such as Google Flights and Skyscanner. I like to look at Skyscanner as one of my, go-to search engines. I love the fact that you can just plug in a month for anywhere and it will show you the cheapest destinations that you can find. And I'd say too,
Right.
don't just look on Instagram and only want to go to Bali or Bangkok or Cartagena or
Bro, preach, preach.
yes,
Tell the people what happens.
yes, it's more because one, you're only going to be spending X amount of money, more money trying to get to these destinations because they might already be super popular with tourism, right? So that you're not going to
Right.
find as many deals to these places as you would want. Um, but look to places like even in Eastern Europe, right? I remember my first time in Prague, amazing, but there was barely anybody there. It was mid-August, and I had such a great time. I was actually able to meet one of my friends from university who had moved there, and she was teaching yoga. And I stayed at a hostel in Prague, right? It was a very nice hostel. Geared towards young people, but also connecting them to different activities within the community. Forget the Mosaic. I think that was the name of it. Mosaic Hostel in Prague. Beautiful
Okay.
hostel that I completely recommend. So yeah, so finding cheap flights. Um, um, yeah, finding cheap flights, going to places off the beaten track, be the first one to, travel and post a blog post or an image post in like Timbuktu or something, or Windhoek, Namibia. Um, Go somewhere that's just going to excite you, and sometimes that means it will be less on your wallet. Trust me. And then also when you are traveling, again, some people travel for different reasons. Some people just want to spend the money to on the plane and a good hotel and just want to eat good all the time, right? So that might mean you're spending about $100 or $150 a day on food. But for somebody like me, it's no, I'll have a light breakfast. Lunch and dinner might be a falafel or a salad because for me, it's less about the cuisine when I'm traveling, but and more about the experience, right?
Right.
And sure, an experience, cuisine is also very much part of the travel experience, but I'm not somebody that's pretty much going to drop 60, 70 euro on a dinner if I can use that 60 to 70 euro to have explored countless, cities and, just really get lost somewhere. And that 60, 70 euro that somebody might have dropped for one dinner, that I could have used that over the course of 2 to 3 days for a lifetime of experiences.
Right. Even if it's as simple as pulling up to a random bar and just sitting down by yourself, you
Yes,
can do that once a night for 3 nights. And those experiences, you'll never know who you're going to see or what's going to happen.
precisely. So it's just about traveling smart, using smart apps and tools such as Google Flights and Skyscanner, as well as Cheap Fare Guru, and always just check 2 to 3 different sources of um, of 2 to 3 different sources before you book. And then, of course, everybody knows Tuesdays typically a good day to buy flights, as well as extend your your holidays, so long weekends that we have in the States, MLK weekend, Veterans Day weekend, um, Christopher Columbus Day weekend. Well, which is, I think it's, you know, slowly changing to Indigenous People Day, but extend,
Thankfully.
yeah, thankfully, right?
But we know what
Because
you mean.
right, because Christopher Columbus is not who we thought he was. But honestly, it's just about, okay, so if I have a 3-day weekend coming up, aka let's say for example Memorial Day, you know that you're not going to want to fly out the day or two before Memorial Day, and you're certainly not going to want to fly out the day of Memorial Day. So work with your job and just make sure that you're leaving a few days before and you're coming back a few days after, because that will dramatically decrease the price of your flight, and that's money that you can use towards another adventure.
100%. But being a savvy traveler is that's the word for it, bro. Thank you for sharing so much. I think people hopefully they've sat in this long, but these are gems right here. This is how you get it done, and it's practical.
And then also just save in your day-to-day life, in your, like, skip a brunch or two. You Even though Jerry loves to shop, don't be like Jerry sitting on Amazon whole weekend long shopping. Like, save some coins, like no pair of shoe or no new jacket will ever feel as good as stepping off a plane in a different country for the first time ever. And if it does, come and find me and let's fight about it.
Right, get ready to run ahead. I will tell you though how I'm doing shopping now though, bro, because it's a light flex, but this is what I enjoy doing. I enjoy going to different countries. Like I was in Burkina Faso, where things are much more affordable.
Hmm.
I'll pick up 6 tailored shirts, 3 suits off rip for a tenth of what I pay in the States. And now I've been able to take that travel experience
Yes.
with me. And when I go out to the theater or dance performances or business meetings, now I'm wearing my experience and you can't get it anywhere else. That's how I'm getting into fashion now, bro. And
Yes.
it's everything in one. Like you can't beat it.
And I support that. That is what I would rather do. Whenever I go back to Ghana, I'll go with my mom to the Shaw, to the marketplace, and we'll pick out fabrics. And those fabrics, it will be made into custom pieces, and then you'll have people saying, "Yo, bro, where'd you get that shirt?" I'm like, "Across the Atlantic," and I'm not being cheeky. It was a custom made shirt.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not being cheeky, but call it what you want. I
Yeah,
look good.
exactly.
Um, Oh man, dude, this has been dope. So before we roll out, as always, I want to give you a chance to tell us where your upcoming trips are, how we can follow any projects or businesses you have going on. What's going on in your world, bro?
Well, what's going on in my world is that I'm trying to escape winter. So I am currently,
Right.
only trips that are coming up really for sure will be South Africa. I'll be there from mid-January to early April, working the season. That's again, I'll be strapped down there because of work. And then my birthday is in March, and one of the things that I like to do is experience my birthday in a new country every year. So this year I'm thinking of doing Zanzibar since I'll already be in South Africa. And then for New Year's and Christmas, I'm thinking of maybe Fiji and New Zealand. I have to check how crazy these flight prices are acting. And then just,
Right.
hopefully book a ticket and go. And then just to follow up on these upcoming experiences, journeys and more, definitely just, if you're not already following me on Instagram, Noir Wayfarer, take a look there. And then also just check out my website, whilstaway.com, which honestly, I created that just to document my experiences that I have whilst I'm away, either whilst I'm currently there or whilst away in my head thinking over the journey that I had in X country. So yeah, just basically my Instagram and my website are the two best ways to follow the journey.
Awesome, bro. And I was looking at the website earlier. I mean, the photos on there are super dope. The content is strong. You guys would definitely do yourself a favor to check it out and just see the world through Kofi's eyes, man. We get to do a part of it here on the podcast just for a little bit of time, but I mean, these are some real travelers out here doing it and giving you guys tips along the way. So, bro, thank you so much for sharing all that. I hope we get a chance to wrap because I feel like we'd be talking for a while about everything.
We probably would.
I'm with it, man, and I have my sights set on hitting Johannesburg at some point, either New Year's years or turn of the year. So
Okay. If you're there, I'm taking you hiking to Lion's Head. So
I'm with it. I'm with it, bro. I'll be totally ready as long as I get to bring a couple of black labels with me. I'm good.
yeah,
Gotta stay hydrated, bro. Gotta stay hydrated.
hydration is key. Hydration is definitely key.
Well, man, dude, thank you so much for stopping by. We're gonna wrap up soon. And yeah, man, be safe in your travels. And yeah, we'll be in touch, bro.
Thank you so much, Jerry.
All right, man. Take care. Talk soon.
Okay, have a good afternoon. Cheers.
Thanks, Kofi, for spending the time to stop by and bless us with some travel gems. It's amazing to have somebody who has experienced 6 of the 7 continents and lived on 4 out of the 7 continents. I really appreciate your ability to break down all of your experience into practical steps that I believe anybody can take to achieve their travel ambitions, whether you're experienced or just starting out. And that's really important because a lot of people are just starting out. So hopefully you guys at home or in your cars enjoyed that session too. Make sure you follow Kofi on Instagram at Noir Wayfarer, spelled very similarly to Point Noir. It just has an E after the R. And also check out his personal website, whilstaway.com, where there's a bunch more of his perspectives and images on there as well. As a reminder, going into this holiday season, what would be more dope than to hook somebody up with a passport? Listen, that's what we're here to do with the show. We're like the Santa Claus of passports, basically. So if you have a boo, a brother, a cousin, a nephew, an uncle, somebody who has some desire to travel and see the world, share an episode with them, get them the information, and we will try and sponsor their passport. That's what we're here to do. So let's make somebody else's season bright this year before going in 2019, so then we can have them back on the show and hear about their lit first experience out of the country. With that all being said, as always, I'm your host, Jerry the III, aka Kimono Jack, and this is me signing off. See you guys next time.